Automakers are getting heavily involved in electric and autonomous cars, and the market for ride-sharing is growing fast. On today's show, we are joined by 3 experts to find out how dealers will play a role in this new world of mobility. And now, here's your host, John McElroy.
Welcome to Autoline This Week, coming to you from the NADA convention. That's the National Auto Dealers Association. Today we're going to be talking about the retail side of the business. And boy, do I have a powerhouse of a panel, starting with Rob Kurnick, the president of Penske Automotive. Mark Scarpelli is the outgoing chairman of the NADA, also a retailer in Chicago. And Tim Jackson is the president and CEO of the Colorado Auto Dealers Association. I want to thank all 3 of you for being here with me today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Rob, let me start with you. I'm just wondering what your outlook is of what's going on in the American market right now. I mean, you and Mark are down in the trenches. You have got to make these sales. And one of the things I'm curious about is, you know, we heard how the year ended up going down a little bit. But when I dug into the numbers, retail sales were actually up. It was the fleet that was down. You know, we've got some positives and negatives going into this year. Interest rates are going up, but there's a big tax cut, too, that's putting money in people's pockets. What's your outlook for the year?
Yeah. We feel, you know, we feel very good. I mean, business continues to be strong and continues to be, you know, be healthy. I mean, we see pockets of geographic weakness, but it's not monumental. You know, you think about a year ago, you know, I think we would have expected that the market would have been under a lot more pressure than it is. I think the tax cuts have helped. I think consumer confidence has helped. I think, you know, the just general health of the macro environment is really keeping the customers coming in. So maybe where, you know, the expectation is, you know, a 16.5, 17 million SAAR, you know, maybe we'll continue at that healthy level. You know, I would take a SAAR at 17 million all day long, even though our analysts say you got to grow every single day. You know, but I would take it. I would take it all day long. And when it comes down to interest rates, you know, I think as a retailer, it's important for us, and we have to manage our expenses because of the amount of floor plan that you carry. But on the retail side, you know, every 25 basis points on a $30,000 car is about $6 to $7 a month. So it's not extraordinary, and yet at some point maybe it start to really hurt the business. But right now, I think we're feeling pretty optimistic about where the business is.
Yeah, great. Mark, how do you see what's going on in the market right now?
You know, I would concur as a retailer. Our business model is a little bit different, but it's all the same at the end. We're a family of dealerships, been around for almost 60 years. I'll tell you what, consumer affordability and access to money is key for customers. If that can happen, you know, all bets are off. It's going to be a great market. We've never had the best product ever that we have today. You know, worry-free, latest, greatest technology. Very, very optimistic. As a retailer myself, we're optimistic as we are every day. We're in business. We're there to make a difference. And if we weren't, we shouldn't be there. We're the eternal optimist.
Tim, Colorado seems to be doing better than most of the rest of the nation. You must be pretty optimistic too.
The dealers in Colorado are very optimistic, and they set a new high water mark in 2017. The market was up about 6% retail for the year, and eclipsed the previous all-time high in the year 2000. Colorado is a growth state, but in new used car sales, which is the profit side of the business, was up equally or even better than new car sales. So dealers are doing very well, but more importantly, and Mark hit on it, consumers are doing very well. Consumers have never been served better than on their new cars than they are today. 30 years ago, somebody going in and buying a new car would have expected to have kept it 2 or 3 years and drive it 30 or 40,000 miles. Now there's not a new car in the showroom today that a consumer, if they don't want to keep it, if they want to keep it 10, 12, 15 years and drive it 200,000 or 300,000 miles, they can, because they'll last that long. and the culture has really changed. New cars are better on the environment, much fewer, lower emissions on tailpipe emissions, much safer. That's why overall traffic fatalities continue overall to decline versus vehicle miles traveled, and the cars last much longer. So in quality terms, new cars have never been better.
I can't believe what's going on in the market from a product mix standpoint. We have never seen a shift. I have never seen a shift. I don't think the industry's ever seen a shift like we have of people going away from passenger cars and going to crossovers, SUVs, and pickup trucks. How do you sell cars in a market that's walking away from that segment?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. There's a massive change in that there are still a certain amount of the public that wants a sedan, and they're getting OEMs are getting very creative in technologies that are on cars now, automobiles, four-door cars in particular, and there's still a market for it. But it used to be, in my world, the seismic change is that if you looked at a sport utility or a pickup truck, the mileage on that vehicle was horrible. And now you have the sport utility or the pickup that equals or is greater in some cases than a sedan. So that's part of that seismic change as well. But there's still a need for a sedan. Long live the sedan.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, that there's always going to be the buyer, the customer for the sedan. I think the real test, in my view, even with the greater fuel efficiency, may mitigate it some, but the real test is the fuel prices. The American consumer is remarkably reactive to fuel prices, rational or not. I mean, the moment that you see fuel prices go up, you got a line for Priuses, and it is, yeah, it is. It's immediate. So I think that will really be an indicator whether or not this is a secular shift or a total shift in the industry.
And our light-duty truck sales increased percentage-wise of the overall market by a full 5 percentage points. We were already 2/3 of the market at 66.7% at the end of 2016. We grew it to 72% by the end of 2017. Huge growth, and it's monumental growth. Almost 3 out of every 4 cars our dealers sell are not cars, they're light-duty trucks.
Yeah, be in 2016 and 2017 put together, sales of passenger cars dropped by 1.4 million units. A huge drop. Like I said, I've never seen anything like it. Rob, I think you're right. I think a lot of it's fuel price sensitivity. But if I listen to the oil companies and watch what's going on in the fracking part of the business, it looks to me like cheap fuel price is going to be the norm for a long time to come. You never know exactly what's going to happen in the future. How low might pass cars go?
I guess I don't know the answer to that. I think if that's right, I think if the fuel prices stay the way they are and the consumer level of interest on the sedan side or on the SUV side stays where it's at, then it's going to continue shifting. I think it was in December. I think the number was 75 or 80%, something like that, in terms of SUVs. Even though for the year we ended up at 64.5%. So even December you saw a big spike. A big spike back up. So, I think it continues. I think it'll continue to be under pressure. And imagine it's easy being the retailer. Imagine being the manufacturer. And when you talk about the investment and the timeline to tooling for these vehicles, and if how do you make that kind of prediction when you really don't know whether or not this is a permanent shift?
And on that point, there have been some manufacturers that have missed that anticipation of the market.
Yeah.
Some of the manufacturers have missed the curve totally and now are retooling and getting, and hopefully consumer taste and demand will remain SUV or sport utility or pickup truck, because then they're going to be on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult thing. It can't be changed in a month or two. It's 3-4 year cadence now to set up that product line again.
Another challenge ahead for retailers, this move to electric cars. And as you guys know right now, electric cars in the American market represent 0.7% market share. But the state of California, 9 states in total that account for something like 40% of all sales in the U.S., are mandating that in less than 7 years, it's got to go from 0.7% to 15%. What do you guys think are going to happen? Mark, you want to start with that?
Well, absolutely. First and foremost, the driving factor in all of this, with which we kind of all forget it, whether it be in your government or in our government or the media, we're going to go where consumer demand leads us, period. And it's hard to dictate to customers, to people, that you're going to like this, and it's going to be 15% of the market, unless it's mandated or voluntold, as I like to say. They're going to vote with their checkbooks. We as retailers, guess what? We're going to sell any shiny object that we want to. A new automobile, whether it's a car or a truck, it's brand new. If the customer wants it, we're going to sell it. And if it's an electric, I'm selling it. But our customers are not flocking to our dealerships. Let's face it, automobiles today, cars and trucks, combustion engines are the most fuel efficient ever. I sell Chevrolets. I sell a Chevrolet Cruze. That vehicle, an eco version of that, will get 42 miles per gallon. You can buy 2 Chevrolet Cruzes for a competing all-electric vehicle. That tells the story to me. I'm on the front lines, I'm in the showroom, I see it daily. So.
Yeah, and unless there's some heavy subsidy to support that payment, well, it's just not economically viable for the customer to come in. The other thing that I think is really going to drive electric is China. You say unless you're told, well, they're told in China, and and the population is so big. And in terms of acceleration and development, on the powertrain side, on the electric side, I think China could really drive it, and it could be the entry or the success in the Chinese market that could extrapolate over into the U.S. The other thought I had is, this Mission E Cayenne coming out. From Porsche, yeah, at the end of the year. I mean,
it's all electric.
It's all electric.
It's gorgeous too, by the way.
It's a beautiful car. It's a Porsche car. It's not a aftermarket reconfiguration on the inside. It is 500 kilometers in terms of range, and it charges at 80% in 15 minutes. I mean, I'd buy that car. I mean, all day long. Now, when you get into the volume side, I mean, it's a whole different thing because you're not shopping that premium. But that is technology that I think car enthusiasts will adapt to.
Yeah, and that's about 350 miles.
Yeah, right, 350 miles, 500 kilometers. Yeah.
Tim, how do you see it?
Well, in Colorado, and Rob mentioned incentives, and Colorado has among the richest incentives in the country, $5,000 per copy, and on top of the $7,500 federal. And yet we haven't broke the 1% mark either. So dealers, and Mark and Rob know this, dealers are ready to sell electric cars, and dealers want to sell whatever the consumers want to buy. But we have to get a few things need to happen. One is the range has to improve, and with all the manufacturer investment, that's going to happen. But we've got to capture the imagination of the consumer. So there has to be more pull on the part of the consumer and less push on the part of government and the factories, and it will grow organically eventually. Our dealers are prepared to sell electric cars, though. They've got charging stations. We've got charging stations at our office. We charge electric cars every day, but yet they really haven't taken off, even with all that very rich incentive.
One of the criticisms of the pro-EV crowd is that retailers really don't do a good job of it. Maybe in certain markets, California and the like, LA, San Francisco, but their general criticism is that the salespeople in the showroom really don't know much about it. They don't have the cars stocked. How do you guys respond to that?
John, let me again try and clear up the misnomer there. As retailers in our brands that we sell, and I assume it's across all brands, that we go through extensive training. We make sure that we're ready. As Tim said, at my dealerships, we have a couple charging stations at each of the dealerships. We charge EVs for free at our dealership. We have a whole technical staff that we're required to buy technical tools and all of those things. We are ready. We stock them. The issue at this point is whether it's customer demand or customer awareness. I think we're kind of all on the same page, but again, I'll relate to it's the new shiny object, and whatever the customer would like in it, and I stock it, and we stock it, we're there to serve the customer. We're ready. We're ready to embrace the future, wherever that may be told. I just want to piggyback on what you had said about China. We were there in Shanghai about 6 months ago and talked to manufacturers, and we talked, how are you getting this electric market going so fast? And said it was government mandated. It's gonna be that way. It's a relatively immature market. There are a lot of cars on the road, but it's a brand new market, 6, 8, 10 years, where ours is mature. We have a car park rolling around America in excess of 75 million cars or greater. To move our market into all V is going to be monumental, seismic, and it's going to take decades. They're going to be told that it is, and in a few years, it's going to happen.
Yeah. They're told, and they have massive incentives in China too. But Rob, how do you guys deal with this criticism that retailers really are not that well prepared to sell electrics?
I agree with Mark. I mean, I think in your initial comments in this, you said that we sell what the customer wants, and what the customer wants. A car, we'll sell it. I don't care if it's electric or if whatever the powertrain might be, and then it has to be affordable. I think dealers do a great job. I mean, it doesn't matter to us whether you buy an electric car. Maybe on the service side it might matter a little bit, but you know, it doesn't matter much to us, and we're not trying to inhibit the development of electric. I don't think we have. I would like to tell you we have the ability or the power to do that. We're not that powerful.
Exactly.
Tim, what do you say?
You know, dealers are making a huge investment, not only in infrastructure, but a lot of dealers have invested in their people to train and educate the lead salesperson on the EVs. So we've got the #1 Leaf dealer in the country in Boulder, Colorado, and maybe it's because it's Boulder, Colorado, but they prepare for it. So they have a dedicated staff, a line of EVs, and they sell them in volume there. The dealerships that have done that, and many have, they've taken that market proactively, and in Colorado they've got the boost from the government for the incentive, and they do much better. NADA has a program, has a dealer education, drive education program on EVs, and we've actually taken education and training programs locally to dealers to help them inform their salespeople how to better prepare for the market. I don't buy that dealers don't want to sell EVs. It couldn't be further from the truth, because as you've heard here, dealers want to sell anything consumers want to buy, but there's what happens. We've got Toyota dealers that say, hey, I sell a lot of Corollas for people that came in wanting to buy a Prius and have seen the price point difference. Chevy dealers have sold a lot of Chevy Cruzes from somebody coming in wanting to buy a Volt or a Bolt because of the price differential. As the prices level out, and where it's predicted that EVs will be as affordable as the ICE, then it will be a much different market.
Okay, let's move from EVs to AVs, autonomous vehicles. That's the hottest topic in the industry right now. How is the retail industry preparing for this? Rob, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, my view on autonomy is, autonomy at varying levels is inevitable. I don't know if you ever get up to level 5. Maybe you do, but probably not anytime in the near future. And so there's not much to prepare for. My view is prepare by sort of being a little bit aggressive on what the projections are and what we should be doing as a business. I sometimes listen to people say, you need to focus on autonomy, you need to prepare for autonomy, and my reaction to that is, so should we stop selling cars today? I mean, I'm not quite sure what it means. That being said, I mean, assume sort of that nirvana of pure autonomy. I mean, I think that's pretty good for dealers, and it's good maybe even for someone like us or a company like ours where we have the truck side of it, because they have to be serviced. Autonomy, that is a huge service opportunity in terms of more fully utilized fleet that provides it needs to have the car fixed or repaired and maintained and clean. And the only footprint that can really do that is the dealer footprint ultimately.
Yeah, those levels of autonomous are anywhere from 1 to 5, 5 being the vehicle that just drives itself, picks you up, all of that. On today's shelves, on OEM shelves, cars have a level 3 and somewhat level 4 right now. That's still with a driver behind the wheel. If you get to, I think the statistic is, if you get to level 4, you can save 80% of the traffic fatalities and still have that person behind the wheel. It's inevitable. We have a lot of things to work through in our infrastructure, bridges, roads, the technology itself, and first and foremost, safety is in mind, consumer safety. We at NADA advocate that. We're watching and making sure that the laws represent consumers' demand as well as safety. That's what we're looking out for as well.
And you and I had an opportunity to talk about this a little bit at the Detroit Auto Show. I think dealers will be perfectly situated to support an autonomous network. And both from the owned cars that they will sell, the privately owned cars for those that want to buy an autonomous car, and I do, and we have a lot of dealers that do, but for those that are shared rides, because the individual shared ride, let's say the autonomous Uber or the autonomous Lyft, I don't wash my car every day or maybe every week, but these cars are going to be washed and serviced after they've hauled 40 different passengers through a day. They're going to need service. If they're electric, they're going to need charge. Dealers are strategically located around our metro areas to be the ideal resource for supporting an autonomous network. When those fleets are in service, they'll be filling up the roads. And by the way, as Rob knows, in Denver, the roads are already pretty well filled now, but they'll fill them even more. At nighttime, they'll be in the dealership lots being charged, being cleaned, being serviced, the LiDARs being tested. And that's a whole new opportunity. Our service bays now are not 24/7, 365, but in an autonomous world, they will be. And dealers, in fact, not only are dealers perfectly situated, I don't think anybody else can get situated any better than dealers are to provide that type of service.
I would agree with that. Dealers are in every single community in the country, and nobody else has got that kind of infrastructure. But you raised a great issue there, Tim, this move to ride sharing and the like. We're seeing a younger generation not nearly as interested in cars as we were growing up. I don't mean to broadly say that, because there's plenty of young people that love cars and have a passion for it, but we right now have the lowest percentage of teenagers with a driver's license than since the automobile first appeared. Where do y'all see this going? How much might all this ride sharing affect the sale of cars? Are people going to, not all of them, but are a significant number of people going to give up ownership of a car?
You know, I think, and this is true on autonomy, it's true on ride sharing, and I think it's dangerous for the industry to make these great generalizations across the country, because, you know, a market like Detroit, Michigan, or Lansing, Michigan is so remarkably different than New York City or San Francisco. And I think, you know, when you talk about levels of interest in ride sharing, you know, Uber and Lyft, of course, being the dominant players in that, you know, you see it shift all over the place, and the desire to own a car is different in San Francisco than it is in Detroit or Atlanta or LA, for that matter, because of the amount of urban concentration that's there. So I think it's very dangerous to make broad generalizations that's affected. I think the right way for everybody to look at this is industry by industry, or state by state, geography by geography, and be reactive to that in terms of what may or may not work. That being said, I think Uber and Lyft are here to stay. I think that it's you know, game changer. They need to start making money, I think. We'll put out the taxi business, essentially. But I think it's here to stay, for sure.
Yeah. I would totally agree with your statement, and take it a step further. You know, again, we're retailers, and we see the love affair, if you will, with the car. It's alive and well. You know, social media and kids today, things are a little different. Maybe they might get started a little bit different, but I'll tell you what, they're still excited to buy that first pre-owned car,
right,
or, you know, drive mom and dad's car. That's still happening today. And you talked about the urban areas. Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple kids that live in big cities. Is a car a good thing to have sometimes in a big city? Maybe, maybe not. But you still have rural areas and suburbia that a rideshare program, which are wonderful. I use them when I travel as well. They're great. But if you're going to be, the average consumer has 6 or 9 trips a day, you're going to wait 15, 20 minutes for that vehicle to come and pick you up. Boy, I forgot this. I've got to run back to the store. So somewhere between reality and the hype of it, we're going to meet together and find out the new norm. And the new norm is still people want personal transportation, personal mobility. And that's what we sell, whether it be an EV, electric, or a combustion engine. That's what the American car dealer does. We're 16,500 strong, by the way.
Tim, how do you see it?
I absolutely see it the same way, and that is that. And I can tell you, I've never taken a call from a dealer concerned about autonomy, but I have taken calls from dealers saying I can't wait for an autonomous car because I can't wait for the day I can program my car to drive me to my dealerships. I can talk on the phone. I can read a book, read a newspaper, take a nap, text while it drives. But I'm not going to take my neighbor with me, and my neighbor's not going to take me with him. So we want our cars. Our cars are our sanctuary. That's the dealer's words, and we get that. And so ownership, I think, I personally think ownership is here to stay forever and ever. I think the shared rides may make a dent in like the 5th vehicle, the 4th vehicle, maybe the 3rd vehicle, but we're still going to have cars that we go out the back door to the garage for, as opposed to out the front door to the curb to pick up.
We're getting down towards the end here, but one topic I wanted to touch on is this issue of margin compression with automotive retailers. So much competition going on. NADA data shows that with passenger cars, the average dealer loses money on every new car that they sell. You know, Mark, how do you deal with this margin compression issue?
You know what? It's first and foremost, we go from the perspective of consumer affordability. That has to be there, otherwise there could be a wide margin or no margin, it wouldn't matter. So we need to sell cars and trucks. The rest of it is making sure that as a retailer, an automobile dealer, that our dealership operations are run properly. We talked a little bit about used cars. There's only one used car with that certain mileage and that certain attribute about it. So there is plenty of opportunity to retail used vehicles, service, body shop parts. We're a one-stop shop for consumers. We sell tires, we do oil changes, we have professionals. The American car dealers today employ over 1.1 million employees in the country. That's more than manufacturing. So we're a force to be reckoned with. We're your neighbors who work for us, the college students. So we're part of the community, and you know what? We're dealing just fine with it. We're a place for consumers to stop, and we'll figure it out. We keep evolving every 3-4 years.
Rob, we're down to the last minute. You get the final word here.
Yeah, I think margin, manufacturers, when you want to push out volume and gain market share, it becomes a little bit more difficult of an environment. But like Mark said, the transaction from the dealer perspective is broader than just what you're getting on the front end of the car. There's the service and parts, there's the F&I, and there's the trade-in value, different components that you can help. In fact, if you look at last year, we improved our margin by $84 a transaction, and what was a very difficult margin environment. So it makes you work. I think that's the beauty of the dealership business. I think it's a group of entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs figure out how to make it work.
Look, we're going to have to wrap this up. I want to thank all three of you. Tim Jackson with the Colorado Dealers Association, Mark Scarpelli, a retailer of his own right, outgoing chairman of the NADA, Rob Kurnick with Penske Automotive. Thank you so much for a very interesting discussion on the retail side of the business.
Thanks for the opportunity to be on.
Thank you.